This one throws me. Prograis, progresses. Isaac Burrow. Mr. Isaac Burrow. Is Mr. Burrow there? Thank you.
Would you try to remain seated up near the front?
Seals, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Seals. The third, Irma Jean Miles. At Mr. and Mrs. Summerfield. Mr. and Mrs. Summerfield. District. Mr. and Mrs. McKinley Washington. McKinley Washington.
Did you win last year too? A motion is in order to receive and file communication. So moved. It's been regularly moved and seconded communication be received and filed. Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? We'll have a roll call of the council.
Councilman Butler.
Aye.
Kay.
Aye.
Love. Miller.
Aye.
Fairwell.
Councilman Love.
March. I cannot leave it there. I'd like to ask the city manager if there's any recommendation for traffic and
There may be a need. Any question? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call on the council.
Councilman Butler.
Aye.
Kay.
Aye.
Love.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Fairwell.
Motion is in order to proceed. So moved. It's been regularly moved and seconded that the communication be received and filed. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? We'll have a roll call of the council.
Councilman Butler.
Aye.
Kay.
Aye.
Love.
Aye.
Miller.
Homes were based on simplicity, effectiveness. Mrs. Helen McCary, Mrs. LaFleur, Mrs. Scora.
Miller. Fairwell.
Aye.
We have an oral report from the cultural.
Chair.
Over Ella Avenue. This is not your fault. We are really at a loss because of some things that have happened, and we are seeking your advice. We have not had a quorum present at our meetings since September. Letters to them citing the code and the charter which formed us. We have heard no response from them. There's one member who has come once. We have another problem because there are so many of us who are women. We chose to change the time that we meet. Those are the things that, all right.
With some solutions to your problem.
Could you do that before the second Wednesday?
I will do it tonight.
All right, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you. That the city attorney's report be received and filed. You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? We'll have a roll call.
Councilman Butler.
Aye.
Kay.
Aye. Second. The motion is that the waiver of the fee be denied. Is there any further discussion?
I would just like to read the last sentence of the report of the city attorney. Based on the foregoing reasons, the fee for a special use permit.
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Love,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mirabella.
Aye. So ordered.
We have the Compton Municipal Water Department report for December of 1972.
Move that the report be received and filed.
Second. It's been regularly moved and seconded that the report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I call the council's attention that actually the report that's been submitted to the council is a report from the city attorney's office. In fact, it's on file.
It's on the report we received and filed. We've heard the motion and any discussion. We'll have a roll call, council.
Councilman Butler,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Love,
Aye.
Miller,
Let's send a page out and we'll report back to the council. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's been regularly.
Look at the fellow in the middle, Bill.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you when I look at you, Helen. You know, that's what's so interesting. There was violence before. It was a black-white thing, but now it's a black thing. Go ahead, Helen. Blacks run a city, govern themselves.
I guess this is why it's a lot of commotion.
Yeah.
A lot of violence, and not only other cities like Washington, LA, some here. Why, I don't know. A lot of them feel that, we're living things like this.
Lonnie first, and then I was.
lives in Compton. I want you to
Okay.
We all live on the same street.
Okay. Okay. This is Lonnie Cox, COX, right? You mentioned to me before that you'd like to leave Compton. Why?
Well, like I said before, I'm looking for better things, I don't want to stay still. I'm trying to progress, And if I can find anything better anywhere else, I'd be glad to move out of Compton.
What's wrong here?
Well, several things wrong. We need, I guess we need more law enforcement. And, well, so far we had a lot of gang activities, but all that's settled down now, We've talked to a few guys on the street here, in which Peru runs a long ways, but they seem to think that this is the only street that is causing all the confusion, But overloaded schools, and the homes in LA, they are paying less taxes. And
Blacks who would like to move out of this city. Why is that?
well, I can't explain that. I know that's something I just can't explain. I don't know. It's because of violence, but we have violence in LA, like I said, and people are moving out of LA also, But it's rough all over, really. And Compton just seemed to have the name because it's just I guess because it's the majority of them is black, and everything happened in an all black neighborhood. It seems to bear right down on a little stronger than it would if it was in LA,
What do you think about the black leadership of the city, the mayor, city council?
Well, I don't know that much about him, so I really couldn't comment on him. But I know we need better law enforcement. I know this, So if he can do anything to help that, and he's not doing anything, I think he's failing there,
Okay, Lonnie. Thanks. This is Allen, Allanharden, Harden. Blacks are moving out of Compton. Why? What's wrong?
It was more like, hey, it's more like too much of crime and people's walking down the street getting shot. And it's more like you can't do hardly nothing without getting shot or even getting jumped on. So like the majority is more like want to move out of Compton and move into something.
And it seems like this is really a dream city, and blacks thought Compton was a dream city. you know, at one time.
Yeah, it's a dream city, but you know, like it's a dream city. The street itself is quiet, but once like you have other people, outsiders coming down the street, want to take over something, like what else can you do?
So you just move away from it.
Well, I'm not going to move away. I said that way. I'm not going to move.
Why the crime? Why these problems, do you think?
You got me. You got me. I don't know if it's more like it's a gang raid or what, or trying to see who's the baddest or what. I don't know. I really can't say.
You know, as blacks move from Watts, let's say, into Compton, is it a behavioral thing, or, you know, is it the poor black? Is it blacks who just don't like other kinds of blacks moving there?
You got to ask Dennis. Dennis
Okay,
knows more
Dennis.
about Watts.
Oh, well, it's not that blacks don't like
Well,
blacks.
let me start that over. Okay.
It's not that blacks don't like blacks. It's just that the brothers on this street, they're here to protect the street and the youngsters that's smaller than them that live here. That's what they're here for.
Why do the people want to move? No.
Why do the people want to move? I don't see. It's not too many people have been moving off this street, really. It's around the community.
Yes.
The reason they're moving is because of the violence that happens on the streets.
The muggings and killings and things like that.
Well, if that's what you want to say, yeah.
Okay, once again, why the violence?
Why the violence? Well, there is really no violence here, because the people on this street, they're like united together, and they protect the street only.
How about in the community?
Well, other communities, you mean other communities
No,
outside
here,
of it?
no, in Compton.
Well, I don't see too much violence here myself. Well, it do happen at night, in which that's when the outsiders come in and try to take over, you know. So that's why the violence, you know, they're here to protect.
Okay, great.
That one over here, they dressed fairly nicely.
Right. Well, see what they've done. They've marked this city, but like I was saying earlier, when I first came out here.
Okay.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, you was asking about violence, but when I first moved to Compton, it was violence here then, and the majority was white. And when we went to school, when we went to school at Compton High School, your parents had to carry to school because the whites was jumping on the blacks. So violence has been here all the time.
Now it's a black violence.
Well, yeah, it's a black violence, but I guess they don't have anything else to do. Give them something to participate in, and they wouldn't have all this violence, you know. So
You were leading to a point, and I throw you off the track. We were talking. What were we talking about? Why?
well, because I think if the mayor had a chance to do what he wanted to do, it would probably be a better city. I don't know if it was something about some money once that the mayor supposed had messed over. Come to find out that, well, from what I heard, from what I gathered, that the
Callaway, Callaway. 10 years ago, whites were leaving the city in droves. Open housing, blacks were coming in from the center of LA. That was the migration pattern. It was sort of a dream city. And blacks now have 72% of the population. Really, black power exists here in the establishment, police, fire department, mayor, city council. How have blacks done in governing themselves in Compton? And in answering that, you can kind of give me a description of Compton, where it stands today.
Well, I think my description of Compton over the past 10 years have been very positive. I've been in the wig business in downtown Compton here for about 8 years, and I've seen a change in the downtown area of Compton. The people are still shopping here. The merchants are still making money here. There have been very few changes by talking to the merchants in the community. We all stand here and we're sticking it out. But with a little bit more support, a little bit of the positive side, we feel as if we can do even better. I came to Compton in 1958. I played football at Compton College. It was a predominantly white community. And I love Compton, and this is why I stayed here in Compton and made my home.
Okay, good.
here in Compton. And on the problem, it's about 5 or 6 guys on the Compton Police Department that played football with me at the college. And the reason they are still here because they have an interest in the community, and they are really under manpower at the police department. This is where they feel that they need more help because
You've hired a security guard here, haven't you, up and down the streets?
yes, we have security up and down the street to give our customers a little bit more security. We had security on Manchester and Broadway in 1965 before the Watts riot. You don't see these type of problems, but security comes to Compton 6 years, say 5 years later, and then it's a big issue. Compton needs security. I have a store in the Crenshaw and Santa Barbara area. We had security over there before Compton. And so I don't feel as if the news media have been fair to Compton based on this, by me having stores in these locations. I've never been held up here in Compton. I've never had a hold-up. I don't think there have been too many hold-ups on the downtown merchants in Compton compared to Manchester and Broadway, Crenshaw and Santa Barbara. And I think with a little bit more of the positive sides that Compton can come back and be a much better community from the outside because it's here. It's known world over. Anywhere I go, people know of Compton because of the Compton relay, the great football teams. It's positive. So with a little help.
Okay, let me talk for just a moment. We're not recording. I might identify Jack. This is Mayor Douglas with one S.
Wait a minute.
Okay. Okay, this is Mayor Douglas, 1S, Dollarhide, Ullarhide. And we'll be talking here in a minute. Let's start off with the hard one first. Can blacks govern themselves?
Of course. Here in the city of Compton, we have many very fine black administrators and black elected officials, and I think we're doing quite well. And there's no question about us being able to govern ourselves.
You have problems, a very high crime rate for one.
A very high crime rate, let me explain that to you. If you take the incidence of crime, yes, we have a high crime rate. If you take dollar value, we'd probably have a low crime rate. Perhaps in one of the richer cities that the crime rate in one night, if you measure the dollar value, would exceed that of Compton for a whole year.
But why the high incidence of that?
All right. You have a great number of youth in the community. So you have youngsters running around breaking an antenna off a car, or you have someone taking a cheap transistor radio or little things like that. Then you have some of the older, rougher guys that might come in and snatch some old lady's purse or something like that. But now if you take and add all of that up, it wouldn't come to what would be lifted in one of the rich cities, you know, in jewelry or some art gallery that's robbed and someone take the very expensive paintings and so forth. But Compton don't have anything of that nature, you know, taking place where people are really going all out lifting $10,000 or $100,000 worth of jewelry or furs or things of that nature. What's happening in Compton is a few little petty crimes, you know, 10 to maybe $300 or $400.
I thought you had 47 murders last year.
Now, that's a problem of domestic quarrels and so forth. There's no way you can control a domestic outbreak where all of a sudden on an impulse someone killed another. And it's perhaps because so many people in the community have guns, and I don't know why so many people like to have guns around, but that's perhaps the reason for that.
Sounds like you're describing an all-white community rather than an all-black. There is a tendency to look at Compton because it is a large, all 72% black community and say, look, there are problems here, and can they make it?
Well, black people and white people are pretty much the same. You know, for a year I sat on jury duty, I did jury duty, and I noticed that the crimes of blacks and whites, they were pretty much the same. The crimes that are different are if you have a Mexican-American or Oriental or someone, their crimes are different. But I come to the conclusion that the only difference between a black man and a white man is the texture of his skin. His habits are pretty much the same, and the habits that black people have are the same habits that white people have. If you were to carve out an area In any large city throughout the United States where 72% of the people were black, you would perhaps come up with the same figures and ratio of crime, and that's because of the same condition, the social conditions.
Then does Compton have rather unique problems because it is black?
Yes, as far as crime is concerned, that's unique because we're 72% black. Take Los Angeles, it's 17% black. So when you start averaging out the crime, it's different. But if you take an area in Los Angeles that's 72% black and with the same other ethnic proportions as Compton has, I think the figures would come out the same as they are in Compton.
Why is that?
Well, I think I stated it. It's that the blacks are the last to be hired, the first to be fired, and they came from, most of them came from down south where they had unequal educational opportunities for the last 300 years, and they're not equipped to compete in a society where very high skills are needed.
Comparing yourself with an adjacent community and someone in the same position, another mayor there, would you say that you had more difficult problems because of those that you just stated than he might have with a white middle-class community?
With the same population?
Yes, a comparable population because of the things you just stated.
Well, if his population was majority whites, whereas whites they had better opportunities, and even if a white and black have the same educational requirements, opportunities, the white's going to get hired first, and he's going to be given more consideration. Then the blacks have, they, in a sense, you can understand why there's hostility among blacks because of the racial attitudes in the country that have prevailed for the last 300 years. And as a result, blacks even sometimes take it out on other blacks. Once the hostility has been developed within a person, that you don't know who they're going to take it out on.
Is that the case here in Compton? Do you feel that?
Oh, I don't think we have a great number. Let's say the big problem is that it's not that there are so many people that are committing the crimes. We have a problem with recycling criminals. Our criminal justice system is not adequate, and this is not due to municipal government. You see, the criminal justice system has to relate to the county and the state and so forth. And the problem is here that it's the same criminal that commits the crime over and over and over again, but due to this, the fact that judges turn them loose, they are recycled right back out in the community to commit the same crimes, or even worse crimes than they committed originally. And if you could pick up, say, 200 or 300 criminals and put them away, I think it would just about resolve, the majority of the crime problem.
Same thing I hear in the white community.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think it's as bad as here. They really turn these criminals right back out here in the street on the people over and over again.
You had more to begin with than, I suppose, the other communities.
Well, I haven't checked with the police department recently, but we did find a few years ago that most of the crimes being committed in Compton was from outsiders. We're located right next to one of the larger metropolitan cities in the country, and if we have an overflow of people that come down to Compton to commit their crimes, because of the failure of the criminal justice system in the community, they feel that they can come into Compton and commit a crime and then get out. And if they get caught, well, they bring them back down here, and they'll just be recycled, as I said, and that it's easier to commit the crime in Compton and get away with it than it is some other place.
Why is it easier here?
Well, you get a white liberal judge in a city like Compton that's all black. He doesn't want to make any waves. He doesn't want to antagonize the black community, so he pets the criminal. But I really think these judges many of them should get out and talk with some of the people in the community and really learn how they feel about it, because they aren't satisfied with the system as it works right now. That they don't want anyone to feel sorry for these criminals. A few people do, but usually the ones that holler the loudest are the ones who are involved in the criminal process themselves.
Seems almost ironic.
They're beautiful psychologists. They really know how to use psychology on the white liberal judges.
Here we finally have a city where the mayor is black, police chief, fire department, many of the city council members, and yet the problem rests, as you say, with a white liberal judge.
A white liberal judge and an adequate probation department. There are many of these fellows that have committed crime, so they are paroled, and the probation officer only see him once every 6 weeks, and he's not able to keep up with them. You see, the problem is that they have a system whereby they assign so many district attorneys, so many probation officers, so many judges to each area according to the amount of cases, or the caseload. But the caseload in this area is a little bit unique. The persons that are on probation need a little bit more attention, perhaps, than one in...
Rule 3.
Well, too, I guess, on the mayor. With that kind of a crime problem, the fallout, scaring people away, scaring industry and commercial ventures away, is also rather serious, isn't it?
Definitely, and it's one of the reasons we rather not play it up too much, but we have the problem, and we like to sort of express to the people why we have it. But I don't know, they don't bother the industrialists that much, you know, the ones that are here. Most of these crimes are committed in the small stores and a few homes being burglarized, or liquor stores or something of that nature. Not anything as large as one of the industrial properties. It's not a great deal there.
We've been talking in negative terms for a while. Let's shift gears if we can. Compton is sort of a model city in the sense that it's the largest black-governed city west of the Mississippi. Countless eyes are on you, expecting, can they make it? Has Compton made it under black leadership?
Oh, definitely. We're doing quite well. We have some very competent administrators. We have very competent elected officials. And we're doing just as well as any other city. And the people, they seem to be quite pleased. Very frequently have people stop me in the restaurants and places about the city, and they say, well, Mayor Dollahide, you fellows are certainly doing a fine job down at City Hall, and we just wanted to pass the word on to you that we're behind you, and we appreciate what you're doing. And we've done a lot of things here, like widening the street, upgrading the parks, and developing programs for our senior citizens, and we've beautified a lot of areas within the city, and our industrial park is progressing something from 4 to 6 months ahead of schedule, and we have some of the finest industrial plants within the country here. In fact, this Cabot and Forbes consists of 540 acres of industrial property, and it's really one of the best tracts west of the Mississippi or anywhere in the West.
As far as the problems that we were discussing earlier?
With
regard to crime?
Yes, the crime, that, like I said, that doesn't affect the industrial parks that much. It's the crime only affect the citizen that's running a small business or the homeowners.
City finances. You've never gone bankrupt, certainly. You have one of the highest tax rates, though.
We have a very high tax rate because we have a lot of young people, and they are being taxed to support the schools. The city has not raised taxes in the last 3 years. Then the industrial park will bring in close to $2 million, I guess, this year. I can't remember the exact figure. I think last year it was $1,800,000. So I would think this year we should exceed over $2 million in taxes from the industrial park. Now, the great amount of that money will go into the schools, again, because it takes an awful lot of money to run the schools. The school budget is somewhere in the area of $45 million, whereas the city is operating off around $15 million. And of that $15 million, about $5 million is federal money that we're getting through our model cities programs and redevelopment of the city. So actually, the city tax, the money that we are spending out of the revenues derived through the city are somewhere around $9 or $10 million.
What do you say to the people who come in and say, Compton's really on the skids? Look here, it has black leadership and it hasn't made it.
Well, what happens is that there were whites who moved out of Compton. Not all whites, most of the whites around Compton, very nice people. But there were this handful who, when they moved out, they said, Compton's going to the dogs. Then we have some black people who think like white people, and they also say, well, Compton's had it, it's going to the dogs, but they're only minority. People are buying in Compton every day, and you can drive up and down the street and see people adding rooms onto their houses or building a new garage or doing something to improve their property, and they certainly must have confidence in the city or they wouldn't be spending money to improve their properties. And the majority of the citizens up and down the street do not complain. Most of the complaints come from people who ran for a public office and lost, or they intend to run with an election coming up this year. They anticipate running for an office, so they give the city a bad name and give the officials a bad name. But the real concerned citizen about the city of Compton, they don't have too many complaints. If they have complaints, they are constructive complaints and many times legitimate.
One observation was that black leadership has really only been in power for a few years, and even they need some time to gain experience.
That's correct, and actually Compton is sort of a training ground. for many blacks. We had one gentleman here that was a city manager for a couple of years, and then he resigned and went to Kansas City, which is much larger than Compton. He went to Kansas City as an assistant city manager. We sort of felt like we trained him here, you know, and there are many young blacks that work here for a while and they go on to other jobs, and we're sort of a training ground for many of them. We're a training ground for a lot of whites, too. A lot of whites on our police department and fire department are on leave. And in fact, most of the people who leave our departments are whites. Once in a while, someone will quote the figure and say, well, why did so many employees leave? Well, when the whites, the city being 72% black, and there are some who resent the fact that the top echelon is black, and they will leave the city to seek employment in an all-white city. And so when someone quote the figures about the employees leaving, we said, well, compare them and see how many are white and how many are black, and the majority of them are white. And I wouldn't say that all the whites left Compton are bigots, or, you know, they just resented having black superiors. I think they may have other reasons for leaving.
Is the police department adequate to handle the crime problem?
Well, we're having a study made of it right now to just determine whether it's really adequate to handle it or not. And we have revenue sharing money that we can use to help upgrade the department as soon as we can determine just exactly what the problems are.
Do the black policemen have any problems within this black community because they're policemen?
Well, some people have antipathy towards policemen. They don't care what color they are. And they have perhaps just about as much of a problem or maybe not quite as much as a white, but they have their problems too. But it's only with that criminal element. Anyone dealing with a criminal element, a person that has no intention of doing what is right or abiding by the law, they naturally resent their law enforcement agencies. They resent the establishment as a whole, whether it's a policeman or whether it's the mayor or a councilman or anyone else. When a person is determined to do wrong, then they're certainly opposed to those people who are enforcing the law.
Any question? Compton was the dream for the black man for a long time. The palm tree in the front yard, 2 cars in every garage, just as Los Angeles really attracted a lot of white people that moved. Is it still the dream?
Of course it is. Actually, Compton is a gold mine for a black man. In fact, I hope that perhaps the council could find funds to appoint someone just to go out into all of the United States and seek out black people and ask them to move to Compton, to open up nice stores in Compton. There's, so many opportunities here for small businessmen. And if we had more black businessmen in the city of Compton with some expertise in the fields of opening up stores like millinery shops or shoe stores and just small business like that, they could make a fortune here. There's really an opportunity for them. Most of the people that live in Compton, most of the blacks, they moved in here, they had jobs, and they were quite secure job-wise when they moved in, that is the homeowners and so forth. And so they're not desirous of going downtown, going into business. So we have a lot of homeowners with money to spend, and they would be willing to shop here in Compton. And they are willing to shop here in Compton when they find the right merchandise and so forth. And we really need black businessmen, and it's a golden opportunity for them.
Hasn't one of the problems also been the fact that it's been a dream city and offered some low rental opportunities for people in Watts, low-income families to move into the city? I now see some houses that are boarded up. Perhaps mortgages can't be kept up. Let me go further. Chamber of Commerce, gentlemen, described pockets of poverty within the city of Compton that give rise perhaps to high crime rates, to some of the inner city problems that we hear about in the larger core areas.
I don't understand your question. I understand your statement.
Okay.
But
Is that a problem?
Well, for a while here, there was a cutback in the development of certain air programs that, building of the airplanes with Douglas, Lockheed, or some of them lost their contracts. And perhaps a few people lost their jobs and lost their homes, perhaps one of the reasons for houses being boarded up. And I might say that I think, too, that real estate brokers really at one time were selling houses to people who couldn't afford them in the first place. And perhaps some people moved in and bought some of these homes. The whites were in a big hurry to get out, and they were making all kind of quick deals just to get out. They'd almost given the houses away. and they probably gave the houses, to someone who couldn't pay for them, or put them in with a very small down payment and worked out some kind of paper deal that just didn't work. And I would think that that is perhaps the cause of that.
Some people tend to think of Compton as a big city, not necessarily even a suburb, but not far from a core city, an inner city, but with some of the inner city problems. High crime rate, some behavioral violence problems in the schools, things you might see downtown in Watts.
Well, Compton is, if you notice the signs around it, say the hub city. We're in the center of the greater metropolitan Los Angeles area. So we are surrounded by all of these cities. We're right in the center of it all. And so
you're going to get everything.
Yes, we get a little bit of everything, and sometimes more than our proportion.
Thank you. One more question.
True. And then after that, when they built new schools, they did name some of them after blacks.
Let's go back and take that question. What can we learn from Compton, if Compton is indeed the future?
I think you can learn one thing is that there are a lot of blacks around who are capable of articulating municipal government. I think heretofore, most cities thought, well, there weren't as many capable blacks, or there were no capable blacks. And I think we have proven that they are. I think that each city problems are going to be a little different, like some of the eastern cities are becoming black. They have more industry to work with. And perhaps we'd be a very good example, because if we can make it, well, then the cities back east with all of their large industry and commerce should be able to make it much better than we have been able to move ahead, because we have very little industry, and we have accelerated our business and industry, contrary to what most people think. In fact, today in Compton, there are more banks and loan companies than ever in the history of the city of Compton. And there are more industrial plants in the city of Compton than ever in its history, because we have 540 acres that is just delegated to nothing but business and industry, besides all of the business and industry that was here when the whites left. They're still here, the great majority of it.
You inherited essentially a bedroom community, didn't you, for Los Angeles?
Yes, it's pretty much a bedroom community. There were a few steel plants, like fabricating or recycling steel, and then we have places that make giftware and pottery and stuff of that nature, plastic companies, and small industries. But since the blacks have taken over, we have Datsun, Sony, Craig, Samson West, we have Nippon Desir, we have Lucas Electric Company, we have Pogan's bakery, that's a Scandinavian outfit, and Sino, Mattel Toys, Octagon, which build musical instruments. We have Bridgestone Tires, Pirelli Tires, Kubota Tractor Company, and many others that don't come to mind right now. But those are some of the new industries that have come into the city since blacks have taken over.
Okay, let's talk a little
that two things play. I think the mobility, any middle-class guy, if he can move up, if he's making more money, he wants to go into a better house. But I think there are also some, we found some down around Centennial, who say, well, if we're talking, blacks who talk in terms of they and those,
Yeah, it's a Ross Miller, councilman.
This is Charles Miller, who is assistant city manager. Compton has some unique problems. Let's talk about them. What are they? What can you tell us?
Yes, Compton does have unique problems. I think the essential feature of Compton's unique problems is that it's a city in transition, and it represents a city that approximately 10 years ago was almost all white, and now it's 74 to 75% black, with approximately 15 to 18% Mexican Americans, and the rest white and other. Now, this transition means that it's unique in that the kinds of things that have happened to cities that have changed ethnically in a very large way has resulted in, I'd say, a cornucopia of problems that didn't previously exist.
Like what?
Problems, first of all, we have to recognize that in our society there still exists a double standard with regard to white and non-white persons. This means that the change from white to non-white in Compton has brought forth all the kinds of things engendered by these, what I would term very frankly, racist feelings. Now, in addition to that, we have a period of approximately 20 years in which a downtrend in the economy has taken place. This means that at the inception of the, quote, new regime, we suddenly find ourselves at the bottom end of the downtrend. And people assign a causal relation to this with respect to the ethnic changes that have taken place.
So the black leaders took over the downtrend or the shell of a city when they came in here?
I would say that's essentially so, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to sound as if everything bad that has occurred at the point when the black leadership took over. I think that the uniqueness of the problems also is represented by the fact that the whole country, particularly our cities, are faced with the kinds of problems that Compton is faced with. And what makes Compton unique, as I said before, is the superimposing of the black power structure on this situation. And I think that's the essential factor.
Now, how have they done by blacks becoming the establishment?
Well, I think that, first of all, blacks have not yet become the establishment. I think it's too early to assign that title. However, I think we're in a period of transition now, both with respect to the changes that are occurring in the city, the changes that have occurred in the leadership, and the settling in of the incumbents. And I feel that things have been pretty good, but really and truly, you talk about expertise, experience, track.
Because some lower class blacks are moving in to get away?
I think if a person is sufficiently middle class, whether or not he's black or not, he tends to demonstrate his upward mobility by moving into a situation that is more in keeping with his aspirations. A larger home, better cars, better clothing, better diet, cultural aspirations, these kinds of things. And I don't think you have to color that black or white. I think that this is America. And when a person is able to earn more money, well, then he's able to not only indulge himself, but to take advantage of what America has to offer. And we have probably the best offering of any country in the world when you have the appropriate economic resources to accomplish that.
Do you think we're seeing a new...
Oh, you want me more?
No, you're okay. Are we seeing a new trend? 10 years ago, whites were moving out because blacks were moving in. Now some middle-class blacks are moving out because some lower-class blacks are moving in. Is that new?
Well, I haven't agreed that middle-class blacks are moving out because of lower-class blacks. I think middle-class people, again, tend to move upward, and it doesn't matter what the ethnicity of the people that they're getting away from. In fact, they're really not so much getting away from as getting to what their aspirations are. Now, I think that this trend is occurring now because of the proliferation of opportunities in our economy
For blacks.
for all Americans. That's
So-
what I would say.
Why the high crime rate for Compton?
Well, again, I think that the high crime rate reflects the conditions from which the people who perpetrate the crime spring. And I'm not trying to say that as a cop-out, for example, to say that the person didn't have a father in his home and therefore he went on the crime route. Because what we find is that we get the extremes coming from the same general home environment. For example, you might have a Rhodes Scholar and a San Quentin parolee coming out of the same home. So it's too easy to give a simple answer to a question like that. I think it's due to myriad problems, myriad conditions, the history of the situation, individual differences in people, acculturation, conditioning, and a number of other factors. And so I don't think you can give a simplistic answer to a complicated question of that kind.
What can we learn from Compton as one of the largest black cities under black leadership now?
I think that we can't learn from Compton until Compton has accomplished things that people can recognize as successes. I feel that some successes have been achieved. However, I think it'll take some time before all of the inputs are in and you can evaluate it.
Then blacks can govern themselves?
Yeah, I think that's the same as saying, can people govern themselves? And if you say people can govern themselves, blacks are people, therefore they certainly can govern themselves. And too often this speaks to the double standard that I was talking about in our country. See, there are people and then there are blacks who are regarded as something else. I think if you can look at the humanness of people, you'll see the same components in everybody. And I think if you go to China, you go to India,
Wide shot, I presume. This is Art and Fran Nygaard, Nygaard. And that's pretty good.
You got the head of the class. Yeah.
Speaking of class, if we can go in on Art first, Merle. Let's talk about the black leadership of this city. How would you rate them?
Wait a minute. I'm not getting anything. All right.
I'll wait for the door. How would you rate the black leadership in Compton?
Well, I believe they are making some progress. There's considerable that to be desired, and I do realize that they have a lot of unusual obstacles that some communities don't have.
What are some of the problems that they have to encounter?
Well, one of the problems, of course, is that the crime rate has increased, and not enough progress has been made on that.
Fran, can you think of any others?
Well, I don't think we're half as bad as they picture us and as they put in the papers, and they'll put it all over the whole United States as if we're the worst country or worst town, and I don't think we are. And it rather burns me up to hear us torn down to the ground when I hear from other people, like a neighbor across the street just came from Detroit. She said, you know, the women don't dare go out after night in Detroit. So she said, I guess they're just as bad off there as we are here. So that proves
all you have to do is laugh at them. Huh?
You can tell me some of these things. For instance, you saw a lot of your white friends simply leave you isolated here, didn't you?
Yeah, I certainly did. About 90% of them left.
Why did you stay?
Because we came here 50 years ago because we liked the location. It was called the Hub City at that time, where you could go to Long Beach, Redondo, or to Orange County or Los Angeles, and we were a regular hub city. We have less smog than any town anywhere around because the winds come in the afternoon and blow it over to Whittier and Cerritos and a few places like that. You can go up Alameda 5 miles and get into the smog, and we don't have it here.
They called that a white flight, that when the open housing came in and blacks started moving into a community, the whites panicked and left. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I think they're a bunch of cowards myself. There was nothing to be afraid of here any more than there would be any place else. And I think a lot of them used it as excuses. And several have written to me, say at Christmas time, and are sorry that they left. Where they have gone wasn't what they thought it was going to be.
Man at the Chamber of Commerce said that really the whites were to blame for the way Compton is now.
There was no one put us, someone the other day said that they wouldn't come into Compton and buy anything. I said, why? Oh, well, we're afraid of Compton. I said, do you think we have an Indian with an arrow behind every tree? And they said, well, not exactly that. I said, then why won't you come down? Well, my husband doesn't want me to come. And I said, now that to me is an alibi. You have a car, you go where you want to go.
Did the whites simply just move out and leave everything?
Mm-hmm. One neighbor and then another. In our, there's 4 blocks where we are, and two blocks on either side of the street, and there are only 3 colored families. 2 are white widows and ourselves, 3 of us.
Now you're seeing another phenomenon, which is blacks who want to move out of Compton.
That's right. And we can't understand that. We just can't understand why they would want to do that. They wanted the town, and some of these people ran out and let them have it, there was room for all of us. Now, next to us, we have the president of the college, and you could never find a nicer man than Abel Sykes is. And we have colored people across the street. And if when our house was broken into, I called for him, and he came over and he stayed with me. And I mean, they're friends. They're real friends. I don't think of them as being colored. They're just friends, that's all.
Now, are the black people who want to move out of Compton, do they want to go because of the problems that came in?
That's the main reason. They think that the crime rate is too high here. Actually, they're as much concerned as anybody else.
Yeah, they are concerned. There's no doubt about it. Those across the street from us have put iron bars all over their windows and their doors, and I said, you look like you're in jail. Well, he said, I want my wife protected when I work at night. And I said, well, they don't break in our houses at night. And he said, well, I feel safer that way. But
your house is undoubtedly secure.
Bars or things on. Ours is wired, but I certainly wouldn't have a bar on my window or doors and make it look like I was a jail.
Has it ever been broken into?
Oh, yes, 3 or 4 times.
And your store?
Yeah, 3 or 4 times.
But you're still here?
Yes. Takes more than that to scare us out.
We still have faith in Compton, and we believe that as things go along, we'll see a lot of progress.
Well, do you think the black leadership is going to be able to govern the city and make it livable?
If the man that's in there now can't do it, I don't know who can. He is a nice fellow. And but to me, those that are in leadership in the city hall should live in town here. They shouldn't live up on the top of Palos Verdes Hills or down in Lakewood or someplace like that. If our town is good enough to pay them their salaries, it should be a good enough town to live in.
I think they have more problems to handle in Compton than another community would.
I'm sure they do, because the conditions here are unusual. The community is different from most other communities.
How?
In that in a short space of time, a lot of people have moved in here, and it's been a problem of getting adjusted. The school situation and all has required a lot of adjusting.
I want to ask both this. First, Art. Compton is a model city. You know, things start out here on the West Coast and then move east. It has black leadership. It has for now 6 years. What can we learn? What can the rest of the nation learn from this black city that has suddenly become 72% black?
Well, now that's the opportunity that Compton has, is to show what can be done when the city is all black. And I believe that eventually a lot of progress will be made.
Eventually?
Yes. It's a little too slow right now, but I still believe Compton has a good future.
Fran?
You want me to tell the truth or otherwise? Well, so the people that have moved out that I know, you couldn't get them to move back in. They wouldn't do that. I think a reason a lot of people came in here, they were able to purchase houses too cheap. And then when they didn't make their payments, they just let their yards go and didn't take care of them. And then the people next door said, well, the property isn't taken care of, and I don't like to live next to things like that, so I'm going to move out. Then the next thing you knew, these houses that had been sold so cheaply, where the windows were all boarded up. Not anyone coming to this town and riding around would hardly find a block that their windows weren't boarded up in 1 or 2 houses. And that is to keep people from breaking in there and stealing anything they could break loose. But of course, I think the federal government has learned a little bit there to not be quite so lenient in letting people in with small down payments and with jobs that were, say, on a strictly commission basis where they couldn't make their payments on their houses. So they stayed in as long as they could till they were pushed out. And in the meantime, everything went to rack around the place. They wouldn't even turn a hose on.
What would you say to a white community that is facing an open housing law and facing blacks slowly moving into their neighborhood?
If they came in slowly, all right. But ours was just like an avalanche. All of a sudden, somebody would say, they'd come in here at the store and say, I'm moving. And I'd say, well, where are you moving? Well, I'm sure getting out of Compton. Now, why get out of Compton? Well, I don't know, but ever so-and-so is moving. I don't want to live here if they're going to fight it. Stand your ground and fight it. Or work along together. Fighting doesn't do any good, but work along together. But thinking you can run to someplace else and keep anybody out, you can't do it. If they've got the money to buy, they're going to buy, anyone's going to buy any place they want to.
Well, I think an ideal community is one that is reasonably integrated. And that's what the future holds, and that's the way it should be.
They should
Not
be
like
separated.
Compton.
To have one, I'd like to see it 50-50, not 85-15. And that's about what we are right now. And the others are going to have to watch out because they'll go the same road. If people don't want to stay in a town, nothing can make them stay. If they want to sell. Now, you can't right now sell a house to anyone but a colored person in Compton. A white will not buy a house in Compton. And Linwood, within 5 years, is going to be the same way. I know because I have 2 friends that are in the real estate business. And they tell me the same thing.
Was the open housing law? Well, you're an excellent choice. Chamber of Commerce. I want you to go back if we can. You're here 3 months, and you said you had a lot of misgivings about Compton. What were they?
Well, I'm like a lot of people sitting on the outside. I believe everything I read in the newspapers, and frankly, because Compton is a very unique city. It's one of the very few major cities in America that has 75% black population, majority black government. As a matter of fact, for all intents and purposes, it is the major American city that is, in fact, a total black or a majority black operated city. When I was invited to come in and take over the Chamber of Commerce here, I expected the worst, frankly. I had visions of slums and all this sort of thing. And frankly, in the 3 months that I have been here, I have found that ain't necessarily so. I've found that Compton is basically, unlike a lot of cities, 60% of the people, the residents of this city, own their own homes. We have a fairly high medium income throughout the entire city. We find that the blacks who are controlling city government, your school boards, and all of your various associations and committees in the area are very knowledgeable and very capable people, which surprised me. I mean, as a neophyte in this type of a situation, I didn't realize that in the black community there was so much really business and acumen available.
How about experience?
Experience
within the black government here.
Well, let's put it this way: the black hasn't had an opportunity up until just recently to become active in government, so he is learning as he participates. Let's put it this way. But you can quote me, they're learning fast. I mean, I sit at a city council meeting or a planning commission meeting, and I'm amazed at the foresight and the business sense of the people in charge.
You found problems also when you came here.
Problems?
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't we all find problems? You show me any city in America that doesn't have problems, and I'll move out tomorrow. We all have problems. Compton has problems. Compton has undergone in the past 10, 15 years quite a change. I mean, we have, this city has had a metamorphosis, if you will, from at one time Compton was the hub city of Southern California. It was a medium income, solid white community that was known throughout the whole West. Then, after World War II, the black population started moving into the city of Compton over a period of years, to the extent that today it's 75% black. And in all of this change, certainly there's been a little neglect, and you've overlooked a lot of things that are necessary in the progress of a good American-type progressive city. I have found that the basic thing that we need in Compton is a more unified effort on the part of all of the organizations, all of the citizens, the commerce, the industry, and the city government towards developing a spirit of pride of community and a spirit of pride in the appearance of our community. Like most cities, we've neglected our housekeeping. And
why is that, I wonder? Is that a carryover from the ghetto of Watts, from old habits?
Well, now let's put when you talk about the ghetto of Watts, Watts is it's a name, you know, that was affiliated with the.
Well, don't let me throw you off the track. Is that a carryover from the poorer sections of the blacks who came from a welfare condition, let's say, in that Watts area and moved into Compton?
Yes, there are a lot of the blacks who are a lot of them are on welfare, who have moved into our area into comparatively low rates of rental units. A lot of them, you know, federally funded. And these people, they just don't have the pride of ownership because they're dealing with an absentee landlord who doesn't particularly care about the appearance of his property as long as he gets the rent in. And a lot of these people have never lived in a home before, and it isn't like owning your own home. There's a lot of them that don't supervise their children as well as they should. They let them mess around and degrade the environment in which they live, and this is one thing that we're trying to correct. Now, this isn't true of the city of Compton. We have pockets here and there, like every city has, that need attention. Basically, the city as a whole is in pretty good shape, but there are areas that do need a little housekeeping attention, like all cities do. And we intend to see that this is done because, yes.
A lot of communities have had these problems before. As you say, in the past, you're not unique. One reason that people have been looking to Compton is because, for the first time, black power really exists. The mayor, the city council, black leadership. And why haven't they been able to come to grips with these problems?
Why? You mean the black leadership? Well, I would say this, that it isn't a question of not being able to come to grips. They just haven't realized until just now possibly the basic importance of what we're talking about as far as good housekeeping is concerned. They have been so busy learning the business of government, negotiating with the housing and urban development branches of the federal government for the necessary funds to set up a model cities operation in the city, set up redevelopment agencies, and they have been concentrating more on that aspect of it and sort of neglecting, leaving it up to the citizen to take care. Like I told a bunch of citizens the other day, I said, look, you can't expect 5 councilmen at City Hall to put the show on the road like we're talking about. They didn't foul it up to the condition that it's in. It's the people themselves. So what we're advocating is the time is now for a do-it-yourself rehabilitation drive in the city of Compton involving every man, woman, and child to clean it up, paint it up, pick up the paper off the street and get rid of the cans and the garbage, and if the house needs painting, let's do it.
Their task has been really pretty difficult, isn't it?
Very difficult.
An influx of new blacks into this area. They've had to deal with all kinds of things. Problems almost that have been tougher than other suburbs.
Yes, that's true. They have had problems that are unique to, I can think of no other community in America, because you cannot compare Compton with a lot of the eastern ghetto type areas. I want to emphasize once again.
Can you compare it to suburbs, the white suburbs?
Can I compare it to white suburbs? Well, yes, I can. what type of comparison do you want with the white
suburbs? I was thinking, if we compare it with white suburbs, what are the unique problems that make it different?
The unique problems? Well, the white suburbs in this area are basically all new subdivisions, planned communities with ample housing. By that I mean 4 and 5 bedroom homes, you know, and larger. We don't have that in Compton. Compton is 85 years old, and we have a lack of that, of the type of affluent housing, if you will, that is prevalent in the suburbs. So what we have to do is come in and renovate an 85-year-old city to meet our needs. We very badly need homes, upgraded homes. We have a very affluent group of people in this city, your businessmen, your professional men, who I'm sure would love to live in Compton, but they can't afford and they demand something a little better than just the type of residence that's available to them.
Homes are upgraded by upper or middle class. The other suburbs have rather affluent, as you say, white job holders. You have an influx of rather poor people from, let's say, a ghetto or slum condition, comparatively, in Los Angeles. As we've been talking about, those problems are rather difficult to deal with. Is this going to become just another slum, unable to...
Absolutely not. And I'm going to challenge that particular statement. We don't have an influx of what you talk ghetto-type people from the slums into Compton. We have here and there in some of our older housing owned by absentee landlords, people that are on poverty or on the poverty rolls that are brought in here. And of course we have to welcome them. They're part of our community and we have to work and get along with them. But the majority of the people in Compton are a fairly affluent society and they own their own homes. And the point I'm trying to make
is that somebody white is running a chamber of commerce for a black city.
No, I don't think so. Like I said a minute ago, I was sent in here to integrate Compton. No, actually, our Chamber of Commerce, we have, I have a 24-man board of directors. A good percentage of the members of my board of directors are blacks. We don't even think about that situation around here. I mean, I'm sorry you asked this question, but actually, the majority of the people that I represent, the commercial and the industrial and the professional and the utility banks and savings and loan people, the majority of the leaders of these different organizations are white. And frankly, the black-white situation is a fabric of the imagination as far as we don't think about it. We go out to social affairs. We have an installation of our chamber officers next Monday. And we'll sit down and socialize, and the color situation is just non-existent around here.
Well, you said that the black community does not support black merchants.
This is true.
Why?
I can't answer that question. As a matter of fact, a lot of your black editorialists have been writing on that subject, and they can't analyze it. They are appealing right now to the blacks to support. I think possibly it might be this situation because of the background of our America. Let's face it, the bigotry we've had in America. Your black businessmen have not had the opportunity to build up their great corporations and to get the know-how that it takes to do business in modern America. It's the same thing when you, I doubt very much if you could find really a black chamber executive, because there just hasn't been up until now any call for them. I will say this, that there are right now at our Santa Clara training for Chamber of Commerce industries. A lot of your black scholars are going in there and taking, and eventually they will be welcome into the profession. But the thing is, there's two things as far as the black businessman is concerned. A lot of them are not knowledgeable about modern business practices. They don't have the organization behind them like some of your big chain store operations have. And somehow or other, as these editorialists have been trying to bring out, the black are just not supporting the black merchant, the black population.
Two final questions. Yes. One on gangs. What is the gang problem here, the crime problem? Why is it higher, I suppose, than elsewhere?
Well, I'll question that. It's higher in theory, on paper. You read it in the paper. Sure, we have problems. Show me a city that doesn't have problems. Our youth today, they're not gangs in the real sense of the word like you'd find back east, but there are a lot of young people that are in college or in school and so forth, not particularly college, more in the elementary and junior and the high school areas, that the basic educational system hasn't appealed to them. A lot of them are high school dropouts, and when they drop out of high school, they have nothing to do. They're not trained for a job, so they hang around the peripheries of the high school, not attending, and they get together, and misery loves company, and they set up a kind of a group that we call gangs, and they get, like all kids do. You and I did it when we were kids. We ever, the guy on the next block, we'd fight back and forth. So this is a situation that's true all over central Los Angeles, east and south and west. And a lot of these kids, they move from school to school, and they set up, they'll pick a fancy name, and they'll have a gang branches all over. They're not organized really like in the true sense of a gang, but they drive around, they're on wheels, and they go from one community to the other, and they get in their little frays and fracases, and unfortunately, occasionally we have problems. There's been some shootings and that sort of thing.
Let's don't dwell on it. There are more important things. I agree with you. There are other major cities around the country that are turning all black or a majority of black. Is Compton the wave of the future? What can we learn from the experience here?
Well, I think what you can learn a couple of things. Number one, that contrary to popular opinion, the blacks are very capable of operating and running a city. Number two, and I mean this sincerely in my conversation, frankly, the blacks don't want a total black city. Blacks want integration. And the thing that makes a total black city, and I'm going to say this with impunity, that what makes a black city like Compton or a black city like any other city that may be evolving is just a bunch of bigoted whites. And I mean that sincerely. Because why can't they get along? I'm getting along great here, and I'm enjoying every minute.